Hello, everybody! We are back once again. I am the DM Garson, here to remind you that the mimics are off limits no matter how much you want to steal that sword they ate. With me, as always, is my co-DM Chitter Charmer, and you may have noticed we're starting a little bit early today, but that's because we got a full episode of a topic that's a little bit hard to explain, but it's going to make your next campaign a lot of fun. Speaking of, this is actually going to be our last video on how to set up a campaign, because next week we're going to be going back to our usual format of book reviews and talking about other games with the Crooked Moon. But,
Yay.
which I'm actually looking forward to. That book I've been wanting to review since we bought it, since we bought it. I am just happy to say that I'm very satisfied with the book so far, but my one regret is that it's not worth the $70 price tag on D&D Beyond. It's a PDF. You shouldn't be paying $70 for it. I don't like.
Yeah, it's very much a case of well worth the content, and if you're looking to get easy implementation and that's it for D&D Beyond, go in it with that expectation that you're getting the content plus the integration, but don't go into it expecting the $70 to be like extra content that you never saw before.
Well, the thing about the extra content is, and I actually think is kind of interesting, is that they actually kept a lot of stuff like a leveling legendary weapon system that tracks that actually gets more powerful as you do. They have boss characters, a whole bestiary. It's a 456 page book. I think it's probably one of the densest books that have ever been released for 5th edition that we've had in a long time. And honestly, they even have its own built-in campaign. But D&D Beyond is adding that extra $10 fee. Anyway, we'll talk more about that next week. I just want to set the stage for it. It's a good book, but we got some stuff to talk about. Today, however, we're talking about the last, I'd say, pillar of our 5 pillars of D&D campaigning, and that is the story.
Yeah, and not just like story design as we did, but more so actual storytelling, because there are a few different things we wanted to bring up, but they were kind of miscellaneous stuff that didn't really fit into the story episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So to give you a better idea what we're talking about, when we're talking about the story itself, as you know, we did an episode entirely about writing a campaign story and how to have your characters be a part of it and how they would grow from something akin to being, how they would have an outline to it. This is how you interact with that story in a more organic sense, I think would be the best way to describe it.
Yeah. And something that I do want to bring up to start with, and this is with interacting with any story, is kind of a recognition that anything unique that you bring to the table is going to be iterative. And what I mean by that is you're not going to have the default main design. You never are. Certainly some things you bring to the table will be unique, but your design will not be wholly original, and you need to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. And to give you... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. A great example that I think a lot of people kind of both laugh at, but also just take for granted. Just one moment.
So anyway, I have absolutely no idea where this part of the conversation is going, so I just want to let you all know that if you are watching this on YouTube, for the love of God, please follow us on twitch.tv.com actually, it's just twitch.tv /GarsonBavel and twitch.tv /ChitterCharmer. We also want to point this out that if you are watching this video, that YouTube has once again changed its stupid algorithm. So, how can we get around that? Well, leave a comment, leave a like, and just basically interact with the post as best you can. Then it will send that out to other people. And why do we say that? Because we are hopelessly shilling out. That's right, folks. Garson is selling out every ounce of his dignity to get it potentially up to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're going to hit that number eventually. I know we are. But if you're watching this, just know that you can do your part by leaving a comment, even if it's something incredibly stupid.
Sorry about that. Just had to take care of a couple family things really quickly.
All right, no problem. I was just doing a quick little shout out for promoting the video. Anyway, you were saying.
Right. Yes. It's about that iterative design, and I apologize for cutting back for a brief moment, but the iterative iterative design is something that has led me down a couple rabbit holes, really. And they both are semi-related, but both of them kind of led me down an interesting path. The first one is more well known. Have you heard about how the Romans influenced the space shuttle?
No, no, I don't think I ever have that. And now I'm kind of intrigued to figure out what that is.
Okay, so you know that in a rocket launch, you have to have the boosters to get up into space, two big rockets that are attached to the actual space shuttle, right?
Yeah.
Well, those were made in Utah, not Florida's launch site. So they needed to transport those by train. So, well, it could only fit on a specific train like width. Because, it had to go through tunnels and whatnot. You can't just go through the Colorado mountains and just be like, sorry, we're going to extract out an entire fucking mountain for a space shuttle launch. That's not going to happen. So they had to make it fit. The railway track design in the US was extracted from England's because, well, when you're bringing stuff over, why make something new when it just works, right?
Mm-hmm.
The England train system was built on the tram system, which again is just an iterative design. The tram system was built on the dusty roads going through the length of England.
So,
And the
Chitter, I just want to understand. So let me get this straight. So, never mind. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm getting to the point.
Okay, because I was about to. I didn't want to say something snarky. I was legitimately like, I'm trying to follow along here, and then it was like, the train system connected to the tram system, and the tram system connected to dusty roads, and I'm like, wait, what?
So the reason why the tram system is the way that it is because they needed to use the road design that was already laid out, which had a very specific width to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, why make something new when you have something that works, right?
Okay.
Those dusty roads were made from Roman chariots.
Okay.
So from Roman chariots to the tram to the trains to the actual size of the boosters, all of it was influenced by those chariots.
This has been another edition of Garson Train Facts with Chitter. Okay, but now back to the main topic at hand. How
Yeah,
does
there,
how
there
does
was,
that analogy apply to the writing for a campaign?
it applies to it because you're never ever going to have an idea that isn't based off of other things that have come further down the line. Whether that be something as simple as the width of a lane or something as gigantic as like a mountain being in the background influencing weather. Every single thing that your character does in an improv moment is influenced by things that the character themselves or you the player would never think about in the moment, and it would be completely ridiculous to consider them. Because, like, for example, if you told the space scientists that they had to consider the width of their boosters by the Roman chariots, they would think you were stupid. However, if you told them to base it off of the width of a train track, well, that's completely reasonable. For example, a character could be like, oh, I think it's really stupid that I have to base a decision off of something the gods did 3,000 years ago. However, through iterative design and getting to that point, you could say, oh, I think it's totally reasonable that my character would follow this person into this religion. And those creeds that were formed 3,000 years ago and iterated on form the basis of that character's morality.
So let me ask a legitimate question. Do you have an example of this for like an in-game story, or how it could apply to players who are making a campaign to start with?
I think a wonderful idea would be just the Forgotten Realms in general, where a lot of a lot of character choices that you make are based off of decisions that your characters would never think of. Like, for example, in the Lost Mines of Fandelver, you're going up against goblins. Well, why do those goblins want what they want? Well, it's because of what their god said. And why did their god want that? Well, it's because of X event that happened millennia ago. Now, if you were to say to a player, go influence an event 3,000 years in the future, you'd be like, what the fuck? I'm level 1. But if you said, go fight those goblins, they're trying to steal that amulet, well, then yeah, of course you're going to do it. It's all about how you frame something. And that's what I was trying to get at with the whole, like, oh, the rockets were designed by the Romans. That's not exactly true, but it does have factuality. In the same sense, in that one battle in the Lost Mine of Fandelver, your character is not factually fighting a goblin soldiers from 3,000 years ago. But what you are doing is you're fighting the goblin people who want something that their god wants from 3,000 years ago.
Okay, so can I basically like break it down a little bit more like that, because I think it's something we haven't really seen a whole lot of. Have you noticed there's never been like a lot of, for lack of a better word, sister campaigns?
Yeah,
So to give you, so if you're playing a campaign, basically it starts like this. What Chitter is essentially saying is that if something were to cause an event to happen, in her analogy, she's talking about using the chariots to form roads. Those roads basically apply to how we perceive future technology along the way, such as trams and train systems, and then eventually we get adapted to that to other nations, which where we took that type of technology from Britain over to America. Eventually, that stuff applied to leading to future developments that we could not foresee in the short term. And
exactly.
this chart I found basically kind of summarizes it. Basically, so let's say, for example, the initial planning is your session 0. Planning then is you're the DM. This is how your story is going to go, and the requirements are the story beats that you want to have your players play. But as you play that, you realize, okay, some of the players, they aren't really enjoying the combat. They like to have character moments. They like to have, maybe it's more of a social game where combat's fun, but it's not meant to be the main focus of it. So you analyze that and you make the design change to implement those changes, which is where implementation comes in. And so you try testing stuff at a new session, see if it works. If the player likes it, then guess what? Now you have an idea of how to make the next round to go a little bit more smoothly for your next session that you have with the party. That's when you realize, hey, maybe this can work for the rest of the campaign. Ergo, you start working on stuff you evaluate it, make those change, and you keep the cycle going until eventually you develop the ending part of the campaign, which I think is kind of clever in a weird way.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that we talk about this as iterative stuff, but what makes it so fascinating is the point that I'm bringing it back to, is that the Romans didn't influence the creation of the rocket boosters. No, no, no. They influenced the constraints they needed to be in for those rocket boosters to be transported successfully.
Well, I'm not a physician,
So,
so like I wouldn't understand the math behind that, basically.
but basically, stuff that you bring to the table early on
Mm-hmm.
can influence how you behave later on. Sometimes in we get to add on to this, but also sometimes in ways where you go, I have no way forward but this path. How did we get here? And you look back through the iterations And that decision was made early on, and you had no way of knowing.
Now, we want to preference this by saying the following when it comes to campaign creation and storytelling. Um, this can easily backfire. It's very easy this can
Oh,
backfire.
absolutely. Like, do not expect to go in there pulling like 100 threads together. But all I'm saying is that if you manage to do it well, and when you have that moment of, wait a minute, I remember that, both you and your party, if it's done right, are going to have moments of, oh shit.
In fact, this is actually a development tool that's been used in not just campaigns, but it's actually been applied to video games in general. So, to give you an example of how that affected me as a storyteller, I'm going to bring you all back to 2006. Chitter, tell me if you remember this. It's 2006. You have the Xbox 360 in your room. You're playing it, and it's your birthday. You know what you get? You get a copy of one of the best games that year, BioShock, the original BioShock 1.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. When I got my Xbox 360, I got the Kinect exercise.
You're dead to me. Anyway, but let's talk. But okay. Let's first of all.
Okay, it was not my money that I was in control of.
I know, but Connect exercise. You couldn't even get like the racing game. Oh my god! Never mind. I'm going.
Nope.
I'm going to explain this thread before we get too farther into this. So it's 2006. I guess me alone is playing BioShock on my Xbox 360. And spoiler alert for a 19-year-old game, but it's still one of the best games out there, in my opinion. At about the halfway point, you manage to go into something known as Hephaestus, and you're tracking down Andrew Ryan. He's the guy who invented Rapture, the major setting of BioShock. When you eventually manage to get to his office, but before you do, you head into a room where you see up on the wall a single phrase. This phrase is one of the best twists in video games ever. It's a simple phrase called, "Would you kindly?" And after you go down to where Ryan is, he basically go and explains like, "Oh, you came to my office to kill me. Why did you come to kill me? You didn't know about me until about 2 hours ago. I never did anything to you." And he uses the phrase, "a man chooses, a slave obeys." And then he reveals the trick. That throughout the game, your help, Atlas, has been using the words, "would you kindly?" And suddenly it becomes clear because the phrase actually is a mind control phrase for the main character. He's actually Ryan's genetic son. And so he can access all the locks and everything in Rapture because he's technically the son of Andrew Ryan. But he's been conditioned to have this phrase play in his mind, "would you kindly?" And over the radio, you hear it, you don't think much of it because it sounds like he's asking nicely, right? But then you start to see like, "would you kindly run over there, and your character's doing it without your control. You have no choice in it. And suddenly, Ryan gives you this golf club and says, "would you kindly beat me to death?" And he chooses to have you execute him by his choice, saying that a man chooses and a slave obeys. And when you do that, you get the key to Rapture, you put it back in, and then it turns out that Atlas was never real. It was actually the real villain of the game, Frank Fontaine, who had been controlling you this whole time. And that, to me, is probably one of the best values of threads that you didn't see beforehand that were slowly pulled over a campaign, or in this case a video game, revealed one of the best twisted video games ever. And I mean this when I say that type of writing is how you pull this type of planning off. You have to know that there's a small things. It's small things that lead to bigger things along the way. And then when you hit that climax, that's when you have to have all the clues like line up, and eventually it makes perfect sense what the players have been doing. If you can pull that off, yes, you're going to get that reaction. But if you make it tied to an event that they did when they were level 1, and there was something akin to they didn't help Mrs. O'Leary milk a cow, and it turned out that the cow's milk was the only thing keeping Timmy's parents alive, And Timmy's parents died, and so little Timmy eventually developed a fascination with the dark arts to raise his parents back up. And now that's why you have a necromancer. Your players are going to think you're stupid.
Exactly. There's one storyline, and this is my personal favorite because it's so stupid, but it was such a twist for me as a kid. It was superficial, but it made me angry. And ironically enough, it was from a sports game.
A sports game. What kind of sports game?
Baseball.
Baseball. All right, I gotta ask, what was the game and what was the story?
MLB Power Pros 2008. You are in the AA league working to get to the pros.
Mm-hmm.
That is your goal given at the start. And when you're introduced to everyone, there's one player who is like a you think going into it they're a typical offshoot of Comedy Relief because his name is Stitch. And he immediately goes, "Hi, I'm Stitch. I'm a spy." Ha 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 ha. Like, it's played off as a joke, but he keeps it going. He keeps saying, "I'm a spy. You should do this if you want to be a spy." Da 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 da. He's very not subtle about it, and you think, haha, this is all one big joke. But then you find out something. A scout is interested in you. Well, why you specifically? Well, you weren't told? Someone took great interest in you. Well, who took interest in me? Well, that's not too important now, is it? Okay, that's odd, but it gets you to the next level. That interest gets you to the next level. And then you go, huh, I'm being offered a chance to ditch my team and join this other team that's really super powerful. They've won every year for like the past 10 years in a row. And their owner is super cutthroat. Their manager seems to have an interest in you, and so does their star player. So you're kind of thinking, oh, okay, this is where the interest came from. Just a team scouting out ahead. And then you go, wait a minute. Why do you want to talk to me at your house? Why are you thinking that I should know where your house is? Oh, the manager is my long lost dad.
What?
Who bailed because of money reasons, which hit a little close to home. And it turns out that you're like, oh, you're competing against the star player because, you want to prove to your dad that you're tough. And the owner's kind of a dick in the background controlling your dad, and he was the reason why you suppose that the manager was being told by the owner to send the scout. And you're like, okay, that makes sense. Family connections and all, yada, yada, yada. That makes sense. And then you play the second to final game, the penultimate game. You win. The star player collapses. It's injury. It's a very severe injury. And you're concerned because you know that if a player is injured more than 3 weeks on that super team, they get cut. So you're like, oh, this could be the death of this character. Like, they lose their job. And then you find out that the star player is your half brother.
Oh, come on. What the hell is this?
So you're like, oh, everything makes sense now. The half brother wanted to compete either with you or against you, and the dad was okay with it, and the owner was okay with it because he was just a dick who wanted money. Like, that checks out. But then you're like, huh, the final game's coming up, and my dad has been fired, and so has the star player. So this is going to be easy. And then Stitch leaves. And you're like, that's bizarre. You're not given a reason. And then it comes to that penultimate game, and you find out that the person who took interest in you was not your dad or your brother. It was the owner through Stitch who was his spy. It was completely serious. And now you are playing against him in the final game.
Hold on. The spy is also a member of the other baseball team?
Yes.
What the fuck position does he play?
Pitcher.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. No, back the truck up. So you're telling me that this game is you are a pitcher for a AA team trying to get into the majors. Some guy randomly shows up at your practice, claims he's a spy for the best team on the planet or in the league.
He just claims that he's a spy. He doesn't say for who.
Okay, no,
you only figure out. No,
what I'm saying is, I know he's a spy. I'm saying like he's part of the super team you're referring to, the best team in the division.
Yep.
Okay, wait. So let me get this straight. No one knew that this guy was famous, and he's just going around saying he's a spy.
No one pieced it together.
No one looked at this guy and goes, "Hey, he looks like this guy on the trading card I picked up out of the pack of baseball cards last week."
It does look entirely different.
No, this sounds stupid. Like, this is really fun. Okay, I know we don't talk about this. We're talking about D&D and all that stuff, but, like, folks, come on. This is a stupid fucking plot. I'm sorry. I have to call it like that. It's dumb as shit. Like, I mean, what do you want me to say? Like, because the way I'm viewing it is like this. Okay, let me get this straight. I am Scott. I was Scout. I went to your practice. I am a spy. Turns out I was a spy for the best team in the league, and I am their star pitcher. Oh no! Or even if he's not the star pitcher, he's still on the team. He's got to have like a card or someone. Like, I know for a fact that sports fans and ESPN in particular would never, in America, they would never let this guy get on the field without, or go to another game and not report on it. There's no way. So either our player does not watch sports statistics at all, which if that's the case, he's not taking the game serious enough to be in the major leagues, or he is, and he's just really fucking stupid and not putting two and two together.
Okay, I'm just going to say this. Mm-hmm. Our character is really fucking stupid.
Okay, so while we were looking that,
and it's shown throughout the game. I think one of the best examples is to how to get the best upgrade in the game, period, is a random event with a guy called Dr. Goodjob. And he literally just says, "Hi, I'm Dr. Goodjob. You look tired. You should come to my laboratory." And that's it. And you go, "Okay, I want to become stronger. Cool, sign this contract." And you're like, "Okay, that sounds totally reasonable." And then you get zapped out of existence and back to stronger health.
Can we please get back onto the D&D or the tabletop RPG topic? I'm gonna have an aneurysm trying to dissect that plot, because that's just oh my god, I don't even know. Oh fuck me. Oh fuck.
If you haven't guessed, stupid can work really well if you're committed to being stupid throughout. That's the point that I wanted to make, is that stupid can work if you're committed to being stupid throughout.
And on top of that, I also want to show some examples of that. Oop. Apparently I forgot to turn the chat box.
Well, I showed a pretty good example right there.
Yeah, I forgot to turn the chat box off. So, gonna just fix this real quick. So, the massive... There we go. Just gonna cover that up so no one can see that. There we go. There we go. And turn the chat box off so we can see that. Okay, we good. Okay.
Also, hey, Mantis.
Hey. All right, folks. So let's I don't know what to say at this point. All right, but yeah. So I want to go into that thing and talk about like stupid hooks that everyone does in D&D. So, Jitter, I'm going to show you this real quick so you can follow along with me. This is actually and we're going to use these as baselines to showcase what we're talking about when it comes to how the design space of the campaign setting and the storytelling can use the intrusive. Sorry, Chitter, how did you pronounce it again? Intrusive.
Iterative.
Wow, I'm way off. Iterative. Fuck, I'm stupid. Okay,
No, you're not. But yeah, if I may, just quickly finishing off my thought.
go ahead.
So the reason why I brought up that really, really dumb, stupid idea and why it hit me so strongly is because it followed, as stupid as it was, it followed every single rule that we've talked about. It set the rules for the world. It set the expectations early of the silliness to expect, and it took itself seriously in character, but out of character, like in the game world itself. It knew enough to be, it knew that it was silly, but it took it in a serious way. That's what I mean when I say that silly can work. It's not that silly, like, oh, wacky, I'm going to throw all this wacky stuff in. It's that you have to work for those silly moments. Every single one of these ideas can totally be silly if you want to go for that theme, but you have to make it work.
And to give you some better examples of how we use that silliness but also apply it to the D&D space itself, I went ahead and looked this up, and I thought this would be a good topic to like use the word that apparently I cannot pronounce, the design circle that we were talking about earlier for each of the campaigns, and show how a simple hook, even if it's a silly hook, can draw in your players and have them have fun. So we're going to take a look at the top 15 according to thegamer.com. Starting with, of course, the classic one, a noble looking for new muscle. So let's be fair here. We've all had a campaign at one point or another where the king or the queen or the prince or the princess or the duke or the duchess or anyone who's higher up in the nobility, they need you to go solve a problem for them. Now, you can have a serious problem that needs to be solved. For example, goblins are about to invade and we need to protect our castle.
Exactly.
Or, and this one is an actual real campaign I had, an army of pissed off leprechauns is coming back to collect the bill they owed.
Exactly. And you see how both of them fit that theme, but one is silly, but is treated seriously within the realm of the campaign. Everyone knows it's silly, but it's not silly in the way of like not taking itself seriously.
Exactly. And here's the other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand about the silly nature of D&D is that it is a silly game by design. For like, think of it like this. We have in D&D, we've had creatures like the Yokel, the Pseudo Dragon, the Living Tempest, the Cyclops, and the stuff like the Troll, the Cyclops, the whatever the like the Leviathan or the Aboleth are. These are all creature type. These are all creatures that you could potentially fight in a campaign setting. But then you got the silly ones, like for example, the Feywilds, the Leprechauns, the Imps, the Dryads, the wow, just off the top of my head, there's so much. The gelatinous cubes, the black puddings, the mimics. There's silliness built into the game itself, but it's a silliness that if you don't take it 100% serious or 100% silly, it actually can allow for a lot of really creative space that you don't normally get in a game itself. Like, for example, the Mimic. The Mimic is a prime example of this.
If I may, for the Mimic, something that's really interesting is that a lot of people go for the traditional treasure chest. Like, that's traditional and it makes sense. But what's fascinating is if you ramp up the silliness, you also ramp up the horror. Now, a lot of people go, well, what do you mean? Well, one of the most famous D&D stuff is a Mimic gazebo. Now, of course, that sounds absolutely silly. Imagine a player in that moment, though. They see the treasure chest. They're like, oh, the treasure chest is fine. I'm safe. Click it open, and it's just a tongue. So you're like, oh, crap, there's a mimic. You need to fight it, and you slash it. And then the gazebo rumbles.
And
That's a mimic gazebo that sounds incredibly silly, but in that moment, your player's fucking terrified.
And remember, you could always cast Magic Missile at the gazebo. But And that's not the only thing. There have been people who speculated and have proven ways to make an entire colony of mimics recreate an entire village or maybe a massive city and show how it could survive that way. Like I've seen videos on YouTube that talk about that concept. I've seen a lot of people even draw plans for it, and it basically boils down to this like as the mimic like the mimic will eat tourists who come to the city or stay at the inn, obviously, but then eventually there'll become rumors that the town can't sustain people there and it's been abandoned. So the smart mimics will find a way to entrap more people to the town. And it just is like it's like a ecosystem that feeds on people coming into it. And then there's a moment where like you could potentially have the story go that the mimic gains sentience, and now you have a living town that's a massive collection of mimics that could potentially get up and walk away. Because I believe mimics can move. They just choose not to, because they have to get to some part eventually.
Yeah. But what makes it so fascinating is the stuff we're describing is so stupid. And yet, in the moment, if you play it 100%, if you play it seriously enough, like you play this as not just like a haha, this is a joke, but like an actual serious story moment, your players are going to remember that not for just being silly, but for a moment where their characters faced a true, genuine challenge.
Right, and that's just with like, and again, you could even use the story prop that we have right here: a noble looking for new muscle. That one is easily you could easily have them go fight the town of mimics because now they're aware of the town being a threat, and probably you need to go investigate it, and then they have to fight an entire town. And then of course we have the 14th most common trope in D&D plot hooks: an important person is missing. Okay, this one has the maximum potential for silliness, but also the most potential awesome moments in gaming. So, for those of you who have remember what I was talking about when it came to the Andrew Ryan story bit, you could easily take that story and apply it to something like this, simply by making it that the important
Okay.
person turns out to be the bad guy, but you were always meant to find him, and you find him, return him back to his seat of power, and then it turns out that, oh, wait a minute, we helped the villain the whole time.
Which sounds silly, but can really be a powerful moment.
And on top of that, the important person missing bit for the story circle, it basically, how do I put this delicately? It feels like if you really look at the silliness of this, actually, now that I think about it, I'm just gonna drop that sentence because I can't freaking think of how to make that sound not silly. But that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that if you can't make something not sound silly, embrace the silliness of it.
Yeah, don't be afraid.
Yeah. And then you have classics like The City Under Attack. Obviously, this is for your more serious aspect of the story. You have a threat. You have a defining thing that'll happen, and you could potentially use this attack to set up a future campaign. What happened if the party lost? Did the town get taken over? What happened if maybe they survived? Are they hailed as heroes and are now saviors? I mean, there's a lot of things that you could potentially do with that sentence. It's a good concept.
And also, here's a fascinating idea that maybe isn't thought about, which could be interesting. What if the town was meant to be captured, and
Mm-hmm.
the players just happened to come across it and weren't informed?
And also there's our old favorite trope: time travel. What if they ended up going back in through a portal, didn't realize it saved a town from being saved, and then they ended up changing their future? We don't know. It's all speculative at that point. But as the DM, speculative storytelling is probably one of the best things to have. It allows you to be in like not only have those moments where you set one moment in you set one story beat that will affect the rest of the story for the players, but it also allows you to have these more branching paths when it comes to your storytelling. And this is the key point what we're trying to get across in this episode is that you can't be a rigid storyteller, because as a DM, if you are a rigid storyteller, and I've seen this happen so many times, you are going to realize that your story is going to fall flat around the third of the way in, because there's just nothing to latch on to.
Yeah, you always need to be willing to go in a certain direction. And that's kind of the reason why we don't like the tour campaigns that D&D is starting to do now. Because those are very linear, very railroaded.
Exactly. Stuff like Strixhaven, the what was the other one? That one, like I have Ruin kind of falls under that category too. Now that I think about it, because it's a campaign that's meant to get you to that fight with Vecna. But what's the point of doing all this if the fight with Vecna is going to be so underwhelming? Because we know what the ending is going
Yeah.
to be. It's not going to change by our decisions.
Yeah. And something that I find very fascinating with stories that everyone does is basically just you have an idea and you have it stick to you, and then you change it, but there's always aspects of that original idea that you keep. And sometimes you don't realize you've kept them. Sometimes you go, this is totally unique. Read notes that you made 3 months ago. What do you mean it's the exact same? I just looped.
Exactly. And then let's say you don't want to do anything on the major scale with the city being under attack kind of trope, but you want to have a story where it feels a little bit more open-ended. Well, maybe you want to consider helping out a particular NPC. Like, of course, our good friend Volo the Bard, who, funny fact, and I think this is something I don't know if everyone is aware of, but I found out Volo only claims to be a bard. He's not actually a bard. He's more of a wizard.
Fair enough.
But he's also really bad at his job. But like, well, and there's a point I'm bringing up here is because let's say you create an NPC who wants you to go out and investigate something or learn about the world. Well, that opens up a lot of options for storytelling. Maybe they find a cave. Maybe it's like a Skyrim type adventure where we're not really facing a big threat. We're just going across the country and having, different little mini stories across it. Or if you want to stick with the traditional line, you could always have a character like Volo show up. He obviously is always looking for stuff. I mean, helping him complete the guide to monsters is like a good 45% of campaigns. Like, I don't know how many times this has happened to you, Chitter, but I've always had like some type of Volo campaign where it's we go out, we find rare monster, we learn about rare monster, Volo give us money. Big monster turned out to be very bad. We had to kill it, and then eventually, we would not have found that out unless we had gone that route. You see what I'm saying with that?
Yeah. It's all iterative.
Exactly. And I still can't say that word though. Iterative. Oh, I did just now. Sweet.
Good job. You did it. Gold
But
star for you.
yeah, don't praise me.
You,
I'm gonna probably forget it in about 5 minutes. I'm like a parrot. I hear
you
the noise and I can regurgitate it, but the minute I don't use it, it fades from memory.
Hey, future Garson, put a gold star on him now.
All right, will do. But then, of course, you got stuff. But then you got small things like a big festival, setting up for a major party. Which again, you could also set it up for that twist plot where, for example, let's say you were helping out with the festival and you were doing a good job. Turned out the festival was like a Wicker Man party, and now you have sacrificed a virgin to a dark deity. I mean, I would say this, like that was a campaign. I would sit there shocked the whole time. Like, let's say Farmer Ted asked you to like collect a bunch of wicker and some harvest stuff for his crops to set up for the big harvest festival, and everyone in town's getting excited. You're just like a passerby. You're helping out the town, like the innkeeper, the butcher. The mayor asks you to go take care of something and go rescue the harvest princess. You do all that. You slay a camp of goblins. You come back, and they go, "Oh, joyous day! Now we can sacrifice to our Lord and Savior Baal." Wait, what? And then you just lift the harvest princess into the Wicker Man that they built while you were gone, and then they just start chanting and set the thing on fire. I guarantee you, nobody at that table is going to forget that campaign, and they're never going to want to play with you again.
Be like, huh?
Are we the bad
Now,
guys? I think we're the bad guys.
Now, improvisation can come in small moments as well.
Mhm.
That can leave even your DM absolutely gobsmacked. And
Where,
I really want to pull this on Garson when he eventually forgets.
like,
Have you heard of the haste trick?
uh, no, but I'll probably look it up later and get spoiled.
No, it's relatively simple. So you fake being on the bad guys,
Mhm.
you have your entire party lose their shit, and then you cast the buff spell haste. And you're like, I'm helping you. The bad guys get an extra attack, +2 to AC, yada, yada, yada. And you're like, oh shit, they're really committed to this. And then one or two or how many others, as the first guy goes to take his swing, you drop concentration and they're dazed for an entire turn.
Hmm. Oh god, but yeah, no, you could do that for like the big bad guy, and you can even set it up with something like you get approached by a mysterious stranger. We're not going to go over all of these, obviously, because there are just like 15 of them, and that would get kind of boring. But
So many.
yeah, and there's so
Yeah.
many. Like, really, what would be the point going through all 15 of them? But like 5 of these are probably a good stopping point. And to take what Chitter just said, you could actually start that kind of twist by having them meet someone like a mysterious stranger at an inn. Which, by the way, number one is you meet at an inn. Just throwing that spoiler out there. But
Yeah.
like the mysterious stranger works his way into the group. In fact, I kind of did something like this in our campaign, where Xerneas was like traveling around with you guys for like a couple weeks, and then he died, only to have him come back, and it turned out he was the bad guy of that arc the whole time. And it really went really well with everyone, like to have that happen. I guarantee you, I think everyone had a good moment, like a good like humbling
Good.
experience from that.
Yeah, it was a very powerful, striking moment. It didn't destroy any characters, but it reminded us that we are not the center of the multiverse.
And
And what I find so fascinating about stories like that is that you play into the table's complacencies. As a DM, that is a wonderful thing to do. If you notice that a party is taking advantage of something and using it for just a little bit too much, just just poison the well a little bit. Remind them, don't always rely on your Deus Ex.
I mean, true, because one of the biggest problems a lot of people have when it comes to the twist of telling a storytelling is I saw the twist coming from a mile away, and that can be a
The most
problem.
infamous words.
Yep. And then you don't feel, and then you feel bad as a writer because it was obvious. They feel bad as a player because they weren't able to enjoy the story, or maybe they were aware of it the whole time, or the table feels bad because they ruined a plot point that was actually could have been pretty interesting, but that one guy at the table kind of ruined it for them.
So it's not saying don't call it out. It's just if you notice something that's familiar or you're guessing with the DM, have you and the DM set aside and talk about it. Because if you have figured it out and it would be of no benefit to the table to spoil it, but you tell the DM, hey, I've kind of figured out where you're going with this, then the DM can look at your character and go, well, how can I use your character to influence in a way you also don't expect? How can I make it fun for you too? And then you have that going back and forth. Like sometimes with Garson, with the Ravnica campaign, we've either talked about or I've guessed where we're going. And Garson has said to me, hey, you know where I'm going with this. Don't spoil it. And if you don't, I'll throw in something a little extra so that your character can enjoy it.
And I've been delivering on that promise for about a good 25 episodes so far.
Yeah, but the thing is that it's not been character breaking. It's been moments that the story would be great without it, but it's even better with it.
Especially
That's
because, and I just want to say this: when it comes to making the table the table is going to be your number one critic. It's going to be your number one fan. It's going to be your number one testing ground. You're not always going to get a great pot of people because obviously tables shift over time. New people join, old people leave. It just is the way it is. And sometimes when you do have a good group of players, you really want to make them feel proud and happy and accomplished. And as a DM, I think that's never a bad thing, is to have these moments where you make the table happy, even if it's small things. And I think Chitter basically hit the nail on the head for that one.
Yeah. You never want to make one player feel inherently super duper ultra mega main character special. But if there's one character that kind of is the thread for multiple stories, don't feel ashamed of including that character. Because if a character organically hits multiple story points and it's not like the player taking over, but just how their character interacts just organically comes to that, embrace it. Embrace that and make it part of the story. Make it challenging. Make it something that's fascinating. Because if a character is constantly ending up in different scenarios with different people, that's a chance for those. You have a consistent character that you're always going to love. And that player, you know how they're going to react. So the only variable is that new character, and you can base tons of situations off of them.
Exactly. And I think, if we're being 100% honest, there's one golden rule for storytelling I think is very important to mention. And I think it's key that we say this part to round out the video, because it's going to be just one of the most important things that you as a DM can always remember. Are you ready for this? Because it's very important. I've said this is important, so you better be paying attention, people. Here it is.
And opening up tabs.
Stop going to the Google bar. Okay, here it is. The most important rule that you can have is you are not a failure if your story doesn't work out immediately. I think that this is probably one of the sweetest things that I can say to new DMs and to new players. If you tried your hardest, if you made a character you love, if you had a story beat that you loved and you felt that it was nice, but maybe the table didn't understand it, don't beat yourself up. Don't feel bad that you didn't have the reaction that you expected. Don't feel bad that maybe the story isn't going to be in the D&D Hall of Fame. Don't feel bad that an NPC that you made, people end up hating. I know I'm paying for that with Cody the Codex. But
Okay.
Here's the thing.
Did you genuinely expect to like him?
But here's the thing that is important to remember about this. If you don't give up, then failure is not going to make you feel like a failure. I know that's very simple to do, but a lot of people, especially tabletop RPG players who make characters, who make campaigns, who make maps, who make models, who make all of this stuff, who make the books, who make the stories, who make the subclasses, the homebrews, who make everything that goes into how tabletop RPGs are played. The items, the mods, everything. They got that far by not giving up when they tried something new and it didn't work out. Or when they tried something that didn't work out and then they tried something new and it did. What I'm getting at here is, even if your story is generic, even if it's something like you all meet in an inn one day, even if it's something like a paladin, a cleric are lawful good and they team up with a warlock who's lawful evil and they have to find some way to balance each other without killing each other in the camp. Even if it's just like the lawful paladin has to go be stupid in the woods somewhere for an hour.
Yeah. Don't feel bad that your story is simplistic. Circling all the way back around to what I was talking about earlier with the space shuttle, the Roman chariots were simple planks of wood, and they put the wheels where the lines were the easiest to make, and those turned into the dimensions that inevitably influenced the space shuttle. The Romans had no way of knowing that the space shuttle was even a feasibility within the realm of knowing. Same with your stories. Your first stories are going to be simple. They're going to follow treaded ground, and the small things are what are going to make it unique. And as you grow and grow, you're going to make your own trams, you're going to make your own trains, and you're eventually going to find out that the things that you initially thought were so so groundbreaking are just a bigger part of the story that you're telling now. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's the last thing that I want to leave is that if you find a story element that you like at
Mm-hmm.
one point and then have to move on to something else, don't forget it. Don't force it in, but don't forget it.
Right.
Because every single story element has its place. And every single story element is a multi-tool.
Exactly. And let's say you made an NPC that you really love and you want to do more with it. Maybe you can use that as I guess, a jumping off point for another series or another season of the campaign. Maybe you beat the big bad guy, but the players love the characters. If that's the case, make another story. Maybe make it set 5 years in the future where the characters have all maybe gained a few levels, and you ramp up the difficulty. There's no shame in that. The only thing that is a shame, and I think this is the cardinal sin of creating a campaign, is you didn't have fun with it. You need to have fun with it. See, I have seen so many people who want to tell the next Lord of the Rings or the next um oh my god, another fantasy phrase, or like the next Star Wars, or the next The Boys, or the next Vox Machina, Critical Role, all that stuff. I've seen so many DMs who want to do that. But I'm going to leave you all with a story real quick, and I think this is probably the best story I can have. This is the most fun campaign I ever played. It was a one-shot campaign. It was RPG day at the local game store. Basically, everyone was sampling all the new books, everything was going on, and D&D had a one-shot campaign where you were a group of goblins. Really, really, really silly goblins. In fact, to the point that there was even flavor where they had a goblin song that you could potentially sing, but I didn't do that. What my goblin did is we stole a potion from a local store, and it was like a high grade alcohol explosion potion, right? The plot was we were supposed to go to a hag's place and try to rescue someone who was like the high priestess of the goblins. So we get to the hag's place, we get there, but we can't really go in through the front door. So I come up with an idea of I go up to the top of the house where they have a chimney. I see smoke coming out of it. And we perform the acrobatics checks that we need to lift each other up. So I have the highly explosive brew on me as an item, and I go to drop it into the chimney or where the open flame was so it would explode and then burn the house down. I fail the athletics check and I fall into the chimney. And 10 seconds later, the DM goes, "Your goblin shoots off like a rocket out of the chimney. You are going Mach 3, full force." And I go, "Yahoo!" Now, what happened is that it also dealt about 50 damage to the hag, and because the DM was having such a good time, he said that the priestess was behind like some kind of magical enchantment, so she didn't get any damage. But he didn't know that wasn't the case. And somehow, someway, at level 3, I managed to survive getting launched 50 feet into the woods on 2 hit points, and I was bleeding eternally. But why that's my favorite campaign, even though it's really short? It's my favorite campaign because it was the DM knew that it was so destructured to have these goblins as the main characters. Goblins are not heroes. They're crazy motherfuckers who are dumb as rocks. But you can't deny that it allowed me to have one of the funnest moments ever, even if it was just simply me launching myself like Stitch out of a chimney, going Yahoo while the rest of the table were dying of laughter.
And that's all that matters, is just having that fun.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the best way to describe it, is if you're having fun, then that's the proper way to have a campaign. Have fun, and always remember to include an automatic door opener for some of your players.
All right. And I think that's where we're going to call it. Next week, we're going to be checking up with Crooked Moon and going from there.
Yeah, we're going to be on Crooked Moon for a while. I don't know if you know this, but like when I said the book is fucking huge, we got a little bit of extra time, so why don't I pull this up real quick and show everyone what's in the book real quick, because I think it's kind of interesting. So, I gotta find someone to better adjust these. All right, so this is all in part 1 of the book. An introduction, the land itself, which is known as Duskenwald, the species, the subclasses, backgrounds, feats, dark bargain spells, all that shit is in just book 1. And then, do you want to see what's in? Then you should take a look at what book 2's got. All of this. It's got all of this. A whole.
So basically, what I'm hearing is. So what I'm hearing is that we're taking the next 2 weeks off to figure out what the fuck we're gonna put into the episodes.
I don't know if we are going to be taking 2 weeks off, but I do know one thing. When we start talking about this, we're gonna be at this for a while, because this is a whole fucking campaign. I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
And this is like up to level 12 campaign. Then you got the new creatures, legendary monsters, familiars. They actually have a whole section dedicated to new familiars that you can put in the Find Familiar spell.
Okay, so yeah, we'll talk about getting everything prepped for that. So I guess for now, we'll see you all later then.
All right. All right. That seems like a fair thing. Also, Chitter, wouldn't you like to know the story behind the banjo of old Jericho sticks, the magic banjo? It's a magic banjo, Chitter. It seals people.
Hit my head against the wall.
It seals people inside the banjo, Chitter. It's a magical enchanted banjo of capture.
Look. If I wanted to get captured in the allure of a banjo, I'd just go to Alabama.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, that's our session. That's our episode for today. I'm your host, Garza Bavel, your DM in charge, with my co-DM, Chitter Charmer. I want to thank everyone who stopped by today. It's been a blast. If you are watching this, once again, I have to reiterate, if you're watching this on YouTube, please help us support the algorithm by liking, commenting, and giving us a subscribe if you can. You can find us at twitch.tv Chitter Charmer and twitch.tv Garza Bavel. We stream 3 times a week, and starting possibly by now, if you're watching this on Thursday, which we normally upload these videos on, we have started streaming on YouTube as well, which you can also drop a like to continue watching the chaotic adventures of our campaign, Lost and Found in Ravnica. We're about to travel to a darkened realm, not unlike Duskenwald, in Innistrad. So that's gonna be a fun story. On top of that, on top of that, if you are wanting to watch more of us, you can always follow us at the various social links down below. And we are always available to make stupid videos for your entertainment, because we like that.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
That's everything I had to say. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you all tomorrow. Okay. Oh, well, yeah. Bye-bye.